The John Murray Show. Podcast today's show at rte.ie/John Murray.
Johnny McEvoy, you're very welcome.
Thank you, John.
And you're a fan of the Taoiseach.
I am, actually. Yeah, I think it's a hard job and thankless job, and I think he has a sense of humour. And hard to find that in Ireland these days, but I think I have quite a lot of confidence in them. I think they're doing the best of a bad job, you know.
Yeah,
I think we'll, as they say, we'll pull out of it and things will get better eventually.
Because in the course of your career, can I congratulate you, by the way, for 50 years in the business?
50 years, yeah.
And you're looking well on it.
Yeah.
You've been through some different eras in Ireland's economic history.
I mean, you know, when you think back to the 60s, we were trying to think of it as being all sunshine and roses, and it was a great time to be young. But it was a tough time too. It was a tough time on our parents. But the difference then was we were all very young, so we didn't care that much, you know. 70s were not great. The 80s were a bad time for young people as well. But we all got through it, and I think that probably the worst thing that ever happened to us was the Celtic Tiger, because not everybody benefited from it, and now we're all paying for it. So I think we might be better off in the long run.
And were you one of those who, during the Celtic Tiger period, was uneasy about what was going on?
Yeah. You know, and I remember we used to call it Rip Off Ireland, you know, and everybody was a millionaire, and every plumber and carpenter was a builder, and you know, charging very high prices for things that were not worth it, you know, high prices in restaurants. And now you go into a shop and there's 40% off this and 50% off that. And these shops are still making a profit, so we're paying 15-7% more than anybody else for it.
Well, with the profits they probably got back in the Celtic Tiger years, they were buying houses in Spain and Portugal and the like.
Well, I think we're probably, maybe a couple of years' time, we'll be a lot better off, I think. Go back to our old values.
Yeah, we're getting there in a sort of
we're good people,
way.
And you know, we're very resilient, and we take it on the chin, and sense of humour, I can laugh at it at times. I feel sorry for young people with mortgages and that sort of thing. That is difficult, and the unemployed, it's difficult to live with that, but hopefully that'll be put right in time.
And were you ever tempted to move abroad, to live abroad, Jimmy?
No, I never was. When I started out, I suppose everybody was saying, oh, go over to England, go to the UK and make a big name for yourself over there, or go to America. I had planned to go to America in 1966 of all times. And I changed my mind when old Merchant Durkin came out and went into number one. So I decided, I'll stay at home.
Yeah.
And I've never wanted to. I've been many places, and much as we criticise here, I've yet to find a place as good as home.
Home is where the heart is.
Yeah.
And you mentioned there when you had Merchant Durkin, the number one, and I believe band managers at the time, they didn't really look beyond the highways of Ireland, because they were paved with gold.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that coming in this morning. See, the business was so good, the show bands were cleaning up, and not all cleaning up, but there was so much work for everybody. The managers were very short-sighted, and they saw the business in Ireland and Ireland only. And there was a lot of talent in Ireland in those days that could have made it abroad, in America, in Britain, and they never got the chance. And the attitude of the managers at that time was a case of if you played in the Galtimore in Cricklewood on a Patrick's night and you had a big crowd, that was success abroad. And it was just very limited, and they didn't have vision.
And do you regret that? Do you regret that in some ways? That you didn't see more of the world?
I regret the fact that I didn't get a chance. I mean, I mightn't want to live abroad, but I would have liked to have done more work abroad and become better known. Now, maybe if I had gone abroad, I mightn't have succeeded. I mightn't have been good enough. Maybe I was just a big fish in a small pond. But I would at least have liked to have the chance. And a lot of guys I know down through the years in bands, various bands, were certainly talented enough to make it somewhere else.
You would have liked to have dipped your toe in the water to see.
I would have, yeah. I mean, I never really got the chance. And I said I've been to Canada and I've been to America, but they were all playing in Irish venues. Yeah. So,
and Johnny, take us back to the heady days, because I mentioned you as one of Ireland's first pop stars. There was a time you couldn't walk down Grafton Street without being mobbed.
I mean, I started out as a ballad singer, basically. And I regard myself still, after all these years, as a ballad singer, a singer of songs with stories, which is a ballad, which is what it's about. And then and a folk singer, of course, which is, you know, the same sort of thing. But Then I recorded Mercy and Durkin, and it shot into the charts and went to number one. And like over a weekend, I became a pop star. And
What year was this then?
that was 66, November 1966. I had a record out that summer, which meant nothing. It didn't do anything at all. I was in the Gaiety with Maureen Potter and Danny Cummins in the Gales of Laughter. So that was a sort of a bit of a break. My name started to become known. I was known as John McEvoy then. And then when when Mercy and Durkin went in, they asked me would I change my name. So I said, you can call me Johnny.
Johnny, yes. Taking a leaf out of Johnny Cash's book, maybe.
Yeah.
And just so it was almost instant fame. Then you went from being not that well known. So how did you cope with all the adulation?
It was very difficult. I looking back at it, I don't think I did cope, to tell you the truth, because I'd gone from being unknown and being able to go wherever I liked and go to the pictures or go to a dance, and suddenly I couldn't walk down Grafton Street. Suddenly I couldn't go to the pictures. I couldn't go to a pub, and I was working 6 nights a week, so I was missing out on a lot of things. But yeah, it was scary. It was very frightening. I mean, I'd been used to playing places like the Abbey Tavern and the Embankment. That time they were the big ballad places, and you played to, on a good night, maybe 150 people. That was grand. But suddenly the weekend after Mercy and Durkin, I was playing to 2,000 people a night. And that was quite terrifying. And they were screaming and hysteria and pulling at my hair and tearing my clothes. And I found it very, very difficult. And I had about 3 or 4 years of that. And we got through it. Whether I'd like to do it again like that? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't like that again.
You wouldn't?
No, I think it caused me too much trouble at the time.
What sort of trouble?
I liked the fame. I became very withdrawn, and I had a few good friends beforehand. Suddenly, I had an awful lot of friends, and an awful lot of people who would listen and believe anything I said. I was put up on this pedestal, and I wasn't that type of person. I was quite a private person, and it was just very, 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 very hard.
So you weren't able to maybe distinguish your real friends from the
You
hangers
find out
on?
soon enough, yeah. But I did have some very close friends, and we did stick together and had good times together, and still close friends after all these years. But there was a lot of hangers on, and that goes with it. And you end up being used, and you're not aware of it. I mean, I was only gone 20, so I wasn't aware of all this adulation, and I just wasn't able to cope, really.
Because you were a boy from Banagher in Offaly, in the Big Smoke.
We came from Banagher in 1951. I was very young, and I grew up in Clonskee. But I sort of basically remained a Banagher man, all down the years, and always regarded myself. I remember on the top 10 that night, Brendan Baff announced me as the man from Banagher, John McEvoy. So, I mean, that's what I claim to be. Although I grew up in Dublin, and I love Dublin. Any place I've ever been, I love Dublin. And I grew up here, and I have great memories of growing up in Dublin, going to school. School wasn't that easy, but got through it.
And you said you missed out on things. What do you think you missed out on?
Well, I missed out on the fact that I couldn't really go anywhere. I had to go to the pictures. I'd be bothered. I couldn't be seen in a pub. I couldn't walk down the street. People were never aggressive or anything like that. People were always very friendly, and I never got any negative feelings from people who stopped me and to talk to me and that. But I found they started to know too much about me, and I didn't.
This
like
is
that
pre-social media days. When
yeah,
there was no
it
internet.
was pre, and even then it was. I mean, you're talking about then, which not Facebook now, but there were fan clubs then, and the letters were piling in, and it was impossible.
When you said they knew everything about you, what are you talking about?
Well, they would know. They would be looking into your private life, and because I was a blabbermouth, and if I gave interviews for Spotlight or anything like that, I just talk about everything.
And be all out there.
I would, you wouldn't believe half what I was saying, but that's just the way it was then. It was exciting in one way, but very frightening in another way. And the fact of getting up on a dance hall stage in front of 2,000 people, a band on beforehand, 6-piece band blaring out with brass and guitars, to get up with a guitar and harmonica and one mic and sing for like it was 45 minutes. Then in those days, that's all you did. To screaming teenagers, and of course the girls would be screaming for you, but the guys wouldn't be too happy with this, and there'd be an odd scalp as you go down through the crowd to get up on the stage, and you'd have to have bouncers to lead me into the hall and get me out of the car and put me in the
So
dressing
they weren't
room.
too impressed with their girlfriends.
They didn't like that.
cheerleading
No.
you.
Well, that wasn't just with me. But I mean, I saw that with the Rolling Stones concert.
So you get a few thumps from the boyfriends.
I would, yeah. And often I had to be locked in dressing rooms and places like that, and have bodyguards come out through the crowd and see me off in the car. And that was scary because I didn't really want that part of it. And I found it difficult at home then. I started to break away from home, from my parents, and I just wasn't there. And this went on then to when I started the band, and I was married, and I was just never there.
And you just, we'll get onto that as well in a minute, but you said during that 4 years of fame, when the fame washed over you, you felt used by some people. Do you in some ways feel that you didn't get the proper financial reward, for instance, for all that you had achieved?
Well, there was a proper financial reward, but whether I got it all is another story. And that's a story about almost every single musician can make in this country. It was I was used, but I mean the point was that I allowed myself to be used. I just stood back and let everything happen around me, and I could have said no on many occasions, but I didn't, and I just went along with the flow. And was in up to my neck then before I knew how hard it was. And working 6 nights a week, every week, was tough going. You know, I was never an early riser, but certainly getting in at 5 or 6 in the morning, you're not going to be up very early on that day, and then getting up maybe at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock and heading off again to somewhere else. You know, so I mean. To every place in the country. It's unbelievable.
And when you met your wife, Odette, then did things change?
No, because I met her in 1967. It was the night that the Boston Burglar went to #1, and I met her in town and asked her out, and she said no. She turned me down first of all, and then I got my sister to ask her to meet me. So we met, and we've been together ever since. And yeah, it was. I think it was harder for her. She used to come around with me at the time that I was on my own. But when I started the band, which was in 1970, it wasn't easier for her because I was travelling with 6 other guys, and we had a big van, and we were travelling all over the country. So then I got married in 70, so she was at home. And I mean, I one of my biggest regrets is that I was never there when the children were growing up. I was there on holidays, and I'd be there. And I'd be there times when they were very young. I'd be there during the afternoon or during the morning, but I'd be gone at night. And you're talking about working up to the night before Christmas Eve, and then being off Christmas Eve, Christmas night, back on the road for the rest of Christmas. So there was no Christmas really, except for Christmas Day. But this was the culture at the time, and everybody was doing the same thing. I mean, some bands even work Christmas night, but I drew the line at that. I wouldn't do that. So I suppose my children are very good. They've never given me any trouble, and I owe all that to Odette, that she was such a good mother, and she took over the bringing up of the kids. Yeah,
and they now have children themselves. So
they do, yeah.
In some ways, you're making up for lost.
They still talk to me.
Christmases
now.
It's
I'm now at this stage of my life making up for lost time. Yeah, too late for some things, but grandchildren are great to give you a new boost to life, you know. No matter how bad you feel, when you see them, there's a big smile, and it lifts your spirits. And I don't agree with this. People say the great thing about grandchildren is you can always give them back. No, I don't think of it like that. I love them every minute I'm with them, and tough going sometimes.
Mention their names there.
Yeah, Kyle and Isabella, and who's a doll, and Sinead, who's the newest member of the family, and they just make me feel good. Yeah. And they're great kids.
I'm just wondering, Johnny, then, with all the absences over the years and the missed Christmases and missed family occasions, was Odette a very understanding woman? Or
probably too understanding, because maybe if she hadn't been so understanding, I mightn't have done it. I might have listened to more people and say, look, cut back, take it easy. I just did too much, and again, it was my own fault. I was, I suppose, basically very insecure, both financially and personally. I needed the screaming fans in a way, where I resented it in one way. I needed them badly in another way. And I suppose getting up on stage, you're looking for admiration. You're looking for something to boost your morale and to boost your ego, basically, which is
like a
terrible thing, really.
Like a drug in some ways.
It is a drug, because you're on an adrenaline rush all the time. I mean, even a rush like that, as I said, going 6 nights a week, you're constantly high and very draining. But there's no point in looking back and saying, look, I mean, I can look back and say there was fantastic times as well.
Yes.
And I played in some great places, and I played with some great musicians, and I've been to places that other people haven't been to. And I've done a lot of things with my career that a lot of people would have been glad to do.
Yeah, sure. And you've still a huge fan base. We mentioned that you're going to be on the show, and
which sort of surprises me at this stage of my life, really. Because
the text are flying. Why does it surprise you?
That I've been so long at it. I mean, after 50 years, you imagine people will be tired of me.
Well, they're not.
By now.
No, they're not. I'll just give you a flavour of them now. Tell Johnny I conducted his father on the buses. He was a lovely big man. That's Tony Ball.
Yeah.
Kevin says, good morning. Worked as a lounge boy in Comins in Rathgar about 1973. Johnny gave a 1 shilling tip. Very generous at the time. Tell Johnny I think his live version of The West Awake is just masterful, nothing to compare to it, and he's a wonderful performer. That's Stephen Kerry. You mentioned Odette, and Odette is going through a rough, tough time at
she is, yeah, she's not well, and it is a rough time. So I have purposely cut back on work. I want to be there with her, and I mean she cared for me for all of my life, so now it's tables have turned and it's my turn to look after her, and I'm glad I'm able to do that.
Yeah, and she went back into hospital yesterday.
Yesterday, yeah, she's there at the moment, but hopefully she'll be out now on Monday.
Well, I'm just wondering, you mentioned the fact that you met Odette the night the Boston Burglar went to number 1. Would you sing the Boston Burglar for us?
I will, yeah. It's not an easy one this time of the morning, but I'll do it for you.
You're well able for it, and there are plenty of texters in who'd love to hear it. They'll take any Johnny McEvoy, whatever time of the day it is.
Through that.
I will enter allowances for you, because you're not, as you tell me, you're normally well packed up in bed.
I got this song from an old Delia Murphy record, in fact, and a few people remember her now, except people of my age. Don't really know. I think it's an Irish-American song, but it was good to me. Actually, I was in the Albert Hall on the night it went to number 1. Not the night that it went. That was the week after it went to number 1. I was in the Albert Hall, and it was really the first time I sang it in public, so quite frightening. So let's try and get it back. I was born and raised in Boston, a place you all know well. Brought up by honest parents, the truth to you I'll tell. Brought up by honest parents and raised most tenderly, till I became a sporting lad at the age of 23. Now I've forgotten the words of it now after all this time. I'll do a bit of it, will I? Yeah. They placed me on an eastbound train one cold December day, and every station we passed through, you could hear the people say, there goes the Boston burglar, in cold chains he is bound. For one crime or another, he is bound for Charlestown. All you who have your freedom, take a warning if you can, and don't go round the streets at night breaking laws of God and man. For if you do, you'll surely rue and find yourself like me, serving up full 20 years in the penitentiary. That's live, all right.
Beautiful. It's live, but it's beautiful, and our listeners love every minute of it. I'm just looking at one text
funny,
here.
I think I've sung that song almost every night of my career, and I've never forgotten the words of it before.
There you are. There's always the first time.
Always the first
Nobody minds. Nobody minds. And Johnny, not only can you sing and play the guitar, you can also draw, I believe.
Draw, yeah. Well, I don't know how good now, but I remember after leaving school, there was no art classes in the Tech. I went to Tech in Ringsend, and art hadn't been introduced into the curriculum at that time. And I started work as an apprentice plumber, but I said, no, by 11 o'clock that morning, this is not for me. But I wanted to become what was then called a commercial artist, but it would be graphic artist nowadays. So it was a good job to get at that time, but it was nearly impossible to get in. So I used to spend my evenings at home in my bedroom just drawing and sketching and pen and inks and things like that. And I hawked them all around the advertising agencies, and eventually I got a job in a small ad agency called Admar in Wicklow Street. So, yeah, I used to do... later on, when I started singing, then I stopped doing it, and then I picked it up one year, and I started to do some pen and ink sketches, and I did a little series of churches, like the old country Protestant church, the old Gothic churches. Did a series of those, and the family they're scattered around the family somewhere. But then I started to write songs a lot, and it sort of redirected my creativity to the songs, and I ignored the art. But I was thinking, it's funny you should mention it, because I was only thinking of it the other day, that it would be a nice way to relax, to sit down at the table and just draw again and sketch and do a bit of pen and ink. I like the pen and ink, and because it's very fine, and you're very close to it, and it's slow, and you can concentrate on it, and you really block out everything else when you're doing it, you know. But I wouldn't be that. I'd have to try it again and see how good I am now, but I don't think... I just didn't do enough of it in my life. I regret that a little bit, but I just didn't do it. I found the creative release through songwriting, and that's what took over then.
Yeah, and the creative thing, you obviously, and maybe actually you could pick up the paintbrush and show the grandchildren how to draw. That might be one way of doing it. But obviously you're a very creative person. But with that, creativity has come, and it's been well documented, and you've spoken at length about it in the past. Your own mental health, Johnny, and your form. How is your form at the moment?
It's good. It's surprisingly good. But then I do what I'm told. I take my medication, and that's the only advice I give anybody. Just do what you're told. Take your medication, and you'll be okay. The black dog. You see, when I was talking about those days. The early days with the crowds and the pressure and that triggered it, because by the time 68, 70 came, I was in a bad way, and I didn't know what it was, and I went for 10 years just feeling so bad and not knowing exactly what was wrong with me. I couldn't understand that if I was out with friends and I had a drink, and not even much, but, a couple of pints or so, I'd suffer the next day so badly, and I'd be so depressed. And went 10 years. 1979, I was diagnosed with bipolar. And it was almost a relief, to tell you the truth, to be told, because I didn't know what was wrong.
You had no name to put on.
And I knew then it was an illness. And once I recognised the fact it was an illness, that it wasn't my fault. It was something I inherited. Nobody to blame. And I could actually... I wasn't a bad person, as I thought I was. I had a low self-esteem. And it was the cause of a lot of my problems. So I stopped drinking. I just stopped one day. I was heading off to Tremor, and I said, okay, I'll go through the night without one pint. And I never had one, ever. Never had a drink since. So, in fact, people ask me, was it difficult? It wasn't. I just stopped. And that was the end of it. It just went cold turkey. and I wouldn't dare touch it now. I'd be too afraid to touch it now. It would bring me back to that black place. But yeah, down through the years, there were very rough times and very hard on my family, and they sort of laugh at it now. And but it's not very funny when your son finds you out on the lawn cutting the grass at 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, and on a manic high, and you're not aware you're actually doing it, you know, or you're not aware that what you're doing is wrong or is out of character. So that can be.
What age was your son at the time?
He would only have been about 17, 16 maybe, you know, he was young. But they knew, and they grew up with it, and they just accept it, and we don't talk about it. We just let it happen. And if it happens to me now, what I do is I've grown to accept it. It's part of my life. It's part of me, and just get on with it. When it happens, when the bad days happen, go through them. They go away. When the good days happen, make the best of them. And the one that's probably the hardest to put up with would be the highs, because you're not. You feel great, and you sort of do certain things out of character. I'd be stopping people. I'd be talking to people in the street. I wouldn't normally do that, and talking to strangers, and rapid speech, and rushing around, and being compulsive. And if a letter came into the house that had to be dealt with, I couldn't wait until that evening or the next day. I'd have to deal with it straight away, and couldn't rest until I had that done. And but lately I'm in good, which I'm surprised to find that I am feeling good. But as I said, if you just take your medication and do what you're told, you'll be fine.
And how often does the black dog come visiting?
Oh, quite often.
Our mornings, I'm just wondering, because you were saying that, well, I presume with most performers it's a late night, early morning scenario, but are mornings particularly difficult? Is that why, I suppose?
It doesn't matter. Mornings can be bad, yes, before you kick in. Bad winter nights, December nights, October nights, no, not good. But it might last a week, I went through a period, I think probably the worst period I went through was from about 98, for about 10 years, 98 to 2008 was a bad period of time. I was in and out of the moods all the time. But the strange thing was that I could be feeling in the depths of depression, and when I go on stage it would just disappear. And it was like another person took over. And the person on stage was not the person I was going to be afterwards, or the person I was before.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, your family looking at that person on stage.
They didn't like that. No, there was a sort of a Johnny 1 and Johnny 2. And it was difficult for them to cope with the fact that I could be fine for 2 hours. Or if talking to somebody in the business on the telephone, I'd lift if it had to do with business. But a lot of that had to do with adrenaline and with this terrible insecurity that went with it. You know, this terrible, I had to fight. And by being on stage, I was fighting then. Whereas off stage, well, it's best not to fight it. It's best to just go along with it. But certainly being on stage helped. And
so performing now, I'm just looking at your tour, because you have a mini tour. I think you've described it as, it sounds like a mega tour to me. You're starting off in Naas on the 2nd of February, then you go to Birr, then to Carlow, Dundrum, Galway, Waterford, Atboy. Is there any part of you that dreads performing, or is worried about how you might be for those gigs?
Oh yeah, I'd be worried about it, yeah. But because I'm not doing an awful lot now, what I would do before that, I'd spend a couple of days at home just going over all the songs, singing them out at home, which I find very difficult to do it at home. If there's anybody listening, I get very shy. But that's not really a bad tour. It's only a few dates compared to some of the tours I've done down through the years. And I won't do anything else then for a long time. I just do those, and it keeps me in. Is
music your saving grace?
It has been, yeah. Well, my wife has been, I suppose, but my music certainly has been. I don't know. I tell you something now. If I had continued the way I was when I was working in the ad agency, and the depression hit me around 20 or 21, I'd never have been able to hold a job down. So the fact that I'm in show business. Most of the people are a bit crazy anyway. It has helped. It's not. Your moods are accepted, and if you're in a black mood, they say,
that goes with the territory.
It goes with the territory. If you're a bit manic, he's in good form today, and things are working well for him. But if you're working in an office, that's not too good, or working on a building site, or if you've got a farm, or if you've got a farm and you're out in the fields and it's lonely and you're there on your own, that can be very, very difficult, for anybody like that.
Before you sing us another song, one of your own, Johnny, a word then to others who might be going through something of what you're going through.
Well, I can't really speak for others. All I can say to anybody is how I handle it, and that is that when the darkness comes, you drift along with it. There's no point in fighting it. Just go along with it. And even if you have to rest and take it easy and lock yourself in the room for a while, do it. But medication is the thing. And for bipolar, anyway, I know with reactive depression, therapy can help a lot with that. But with bipolar, it takes medication, and once you're on the right medication, get the right balance, and just do what you're told. Just, I think I learned that from my mother. My mother was diabetic, and I associate the two because, this stigma that's supposed to go with depression, it's rubbish, really, because if you're a diabetic, you take injections it's insulin. You have an imbalance in your body. With depression, it's in your brain, it's actually physical. Because it's a chemical in your brain that's not working properly, and
as you say, it's not your
tripping
fault.
from side to side. So really, I think if you just do what you're told and take the medication and listen to people, go with the flow. When it's good, enjoy it. When it's bad, just batten down the hatches.
Great.
As they say.
We've people who want to hear you sing again, Johnny.
Okay.
I think you're going to sing one of your own songs, and it is going to take us to a sunnier place. Tell us about the song.
Well, the song might be... Excuse me, just swallowed some water there. The song is a song called...
It's all right. Yeah, I'll read a few texts. You get you cough away there and splutter. Bob says, Johnny McEvoy, pure of voice, pure of spirit, invigorating. Aren't we lucky to have such people? Eden Dunleary says, I love Johnny's music. Remember him when he used to buy flowers in the fruit shop in Glenageary? Great to hear a legend on the radio. And Marion Clontarf says, Johnny, the whole country is singing with you. Love and prayers always to you, Odette, and the kids. A national treasure, no less. And this man, Phelan, wants to congratulate you on 50 years in the business. Now, frog gone from throat.
Yeah. It's a sunny place in a way, but it's not so sunny in another way. But anyway, I wrote it some years ago, and I didn't really do the song. I didn't actually like it at first. And then Paddy O'Brien got hold of it, and he had a hit with it. And I still didn't even sing the song till I went to Newfoundland on a small tour. And I was told by the promoter, by no means leave this song out, because this is the hit over there. So it was an actual hit in Newfoundland, and it was the most fantastic feeling. It was like going back 40 years when people used to sing along every word with the song, and it was fantastic to hear about 800 or 900 Newfoundlanders sing every word of the song and have to do it twice. It was great.
Great. What's it called?
He was never there when needed, and oh, how much she pleaded, saying, darling, won't you stay home just one time? He'd just smile and say, I'm sorry, but there's no need to worry, just going to meet some army buddies, drink some beer and fight the war. In the kitchen making wishes as she tidies up the dishes on another lonely weekend, and the wine she drank alone. And the nights they hold no pity in the cold of New York City, as she waits there in the darkness to hear his key turn in the door. And one night he came home sober, with a longing just to hold her, when he found the note she'd written waiting by the telephone. And she said, I'll always love you, and I never will forget you, but I just can't take this lonely feeling anymore. She said, I'm going to California to taste the sunshine and the wine, sit beside the rolling ocean and slowly pass the time, reading books and old love stories, and forget about my worries. And maybe, who knows, maybe we'll meet again sometime. Now the nights are cold and lonely as he sits and watches TV, drinking beer and chasing whiskey, wondering where it all went wrong. And his eyes are tired and burning from the dreams that keep returning, and all his yesterdays, they won't leave him alone. She said, I'm going to California to taste the sunshine and the wine, sit beside the rolling ocean and slowly pass the time, reading books and old love stories, and forget about my worries. And maybe, who knows, maybe we'll meet again sometime.
Wonderful, wonderful, Johnny. That's going to California. Johnny, thanks a million. We have been inundated with texts from people wishing you well, congratulating you on 50 years in the business, and a lot of people also are heading to your gigs. Just a reminder where you will be on the 2nd of February, Naas, the 9th, Burr Arts Centre, the 10th, George Bernard Shaw Theatre in Carlow, the 28th, the Mill Theatre here in Dublin, and in March in the Town Hall Theatre in Galway, Theatre Royal in Waterford, and then in April you'll be in Athboy in Meath in the Oris Pubble, Rathcairn. It's been a pleasure to have you along this morning.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much indeed.
And good luck to you. Johnny McEvoy has kindly agreed to play us out this morning with the verse of Go Lassie Go. Johnny, as I say, lots of people in touch with us to say congratulations and well done. It's been great to have you in.
Once again, thanks, John.
And off you go. Have a wonderful weekend. We're back Monday morning at 9. Till then, slán.
Oh, the summertime is coming, and the trees are sweetly blooming, and the wild mountain thyme grows around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go? And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme all around the blooming heather. Will you go, lassie, go? I will build my love a bower by yon pure crystal fountain, and around it I will place all the flowers of the mountain. Will you go, lassie, go? And we'll all go together to pluck wild mountain thyme all around the bloomin' heather. Will you go, lassie, go?
The John Murray Show. Podcast today's show at rte.ie/John Murray.